Cherish loves, welcome to Entrepreneurship Now. I am so happy that you guys came in to join us for another amazing episode because today I have a person that I have known for some time and I am so amazed at her growth and how she started and where she has come. She is an award-winning publicist. She's an author. Some of your favorite books that have been on the Amazon bestsellers list. Your girl has probably written those, right? She's done so much. So I want to introduce to you guys Very Dynamic. Say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. I'm so excited to have a thought provoking conversation.
I love it. And you guys know that I'm Lachey LaRue, your host, business strategist, and coach for this season of growth. I'm here to help you guys to attract aligned clients, build better systems, convert consistently, and scale to meet your goals. And in this conversation, we're going to talk about how Barry has gone through all of those phases. But I want you to start by telling our audience a little bit more about what it is that you do.
Well, again, yes. So my name is Very Dynamic, and the name of my company is called Very Dynamic Agency, where we are the force stimulating change. I'm an awarded publicist and ghostwriter, where I specialize in public relations, branding, communications, and book writing services for future authors to be. So just really excited for us being established since 2016 and being able to just work with so many different people in various industries and just excited to share some of that information today.
Yes, and you've been around since 2016, but because you're a close personal friend, I know a little bit about the story and I know there's power in your story. So tell the audience a little bit more about how you started your PR firm.
So interesting enough, I actually went to UT in Austin, so that's where I studied journalism. But life was life in, so I ended up having to transfer over to U of H in Clear Lake, in which it was so much beauty in that transfer because I was able to actually hone into public relations. I didn't even know that PR was an industry, and so as I was able to take more classes in that field, that's where I learned that maybe being at the desk and writing the stories wasn't my forte, but actually being able to be connected to individuals with the stories and find creative outlets to, excel them into the community and put them in the forefront of the public. And so from there, during my whole collegiate years, I worked at HEB and decided to grow in the company after being there for 8 years. And essentially, I got told no a few times, went through a few of the certifications passed, but when it was time to actually get the job, they told me that no one makes it on the first round, so come back. And I was like, well, no, I'm just gonna go with my plan B. They was like, what's plan B? I was like, well, that's plan me. And so while I was working at HEB, I did start my business, the Bear Dynamic Agency, while I was at HEB, and just really just learning about business. And because I worked customer service, that's where I really learned a lot of my professionalism and just getting over that fear of talking to people. And so that's how I was able to just really transition over smoothly into my agency. But ironically, when I applied for my LLCs and everything, got everything established in 2017, I had did a huge event with HEB, was working with their PR and communications department, hands on, and did a huge event with the kids and festival and was hosting and just, it was great vibe, great everything. Everybody, patted me on my back and was like, excellent job. I was like, thank you so much. I was like, okay, if I take a leave of absence. And they were like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, I want to take a leave of absence, take some time to just really figure out what it is that I want to do, and mind you, that was right after me getting denied to the second round of interviews. And so from there, took off, and came back maybe like a couple days later, do some grocery shopping. I'm trying to figure out why are all the shelves empty? Why is everybody in a panic? I didn't have a TV, so for years, I mean years, I just didn't have a TV. I didn't watch TV. I read books, I did stuff on my phone, I worked, but TV wasn't my outlet. So I wasn't informed that there was a hurricane getting ready to come. And so I'm just going to the store just to go get a little basic stuff and nothing is on the shelf. And, I go home still not knowing what's going on. And before I know it, I wake up, I'm in the middle of Hurricane Harvey and don't have a job, don't have no source of income coming in. I was able to, liquidate my 401k. So thankful that I had that. And yeah, went, got my granny for her to come stay with me so that way she wasn't by herself. And literally, we were just in the midst of the storm. And I was really challenged and forced to figure out, okay, how am I going to get through this? And from there, that's where Bear Dynamic was birthed out of the storm. I was able to just start doing a lot of market research and figuring out who are the who's in using social media, using technology to just really put myself out there, network, connect with people. And before I knew it, I started getting little odd end jobs like, oh, can you write this for me? Can you do this press? And, I was able to manage during Harvey. And then once my credit card started dwindling down, I was like, okay, it's my last few thousands of dollars. I gotta make it count. What am I gonna do? And my granny, she watched TV, so that was the only time the TV was on when she was over there. And the day that I took her back home, I came back and I put on the news of what she, a little show that she liked to watch, and they were promoting the Marshall film. And, Thurgood Marshall, me being a Thurgood Marshall high school graduate, and the name stuck out to me because, Marshall always stood for, he played a huge, intricate part in the civil rights movement and just helping people get the proper justice that they needed. And when I started doing research on, okay, this is October. Oh, this is what's going on. That's the school I went to. There's a movie coming out about it. Like I started to use my reticular activating systems to really put everything together of how can I put my brand out there into the public, but also make a statement in the message that I want to put out there. And once I did my research, I found out that October was a wrongful conviction awareness week, which is the second week, and which is right around the time the film was coming out. And I always had a great just interest in just justice and, getting people the proper resources that they need to represent themselves and protect themselves and everything. And so I figured out a way to educate people through entertainment. And so I started to host brand activations, which were brand activations for the Very Dynamic Agency, but they were actual film premieres. And so I remember reaching out to AMC and to some of the people that I guess whoever worked on the Marshall films and was like, hey, I would really love to premiere this film. And went through all the paperwork and everything, and they allowed me to premiere the Marshall film a few
Consider
weeks
that.
before the release of the film to the public. And I was able to create a whole experience out of it. I took different aspects of the film and drew in people from the community to represent those aspects. So when it came to, the justice systems, I reached out to, rest in peace to the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I reached out to their office to come out and, say some words on behalf of, Congress and talking about the justice system in the Marshall film because he was locked up. He didn't have access to finances. And so I reached out into the community. I brought somebody in to come talk about financial literacy. I brought in a gentleman who at the time had an organization called the People Law Group, where he taught regular civilians about how to represent your case, how to win your case without a lawyer. So teaching people about their rights and everything. I brought in a former NFL Super Bowl champion to come in, Christopher Darkins, and he was wrongfully convicted. So I brought him in to represent the wrongful conviction aspects. So from there, I started to just create this interactive experience where we watch this film, but then you see what it looks like in real life around you. And from there, I mean, it was a full auditorium. I mean, that was where I got my first award, which you see the wall behind me is all my awards. And from that point, that was the first time I made a true investment into the Beard Dynamic Agency. And I took a risk and I betted on myself to pay for my brand activation. And that's what actually sparked the agency to many, many years later to still be active and, really having impact in the community through the clients that we serve.
I love that, and I actually remember that event. It was very impressive, and I love how mindful you were in every aspect of the experience. One thing about you that I've admired is that you don't just do a thing. You're mindful about the experience that your guests have and the story that your client is telling. So, I first off want to say amazing work over the years. And I know that events within themselves have been a really big part of your PR business. So tell us a little bit more about that in the connection of events and how it helps to promote businesses.
So, events is under the branding label of our company because it's one thing to, put yourself out there or, say, hey, I offer these particular services, but the brand aspect is the personality of the business. That's where you're able to really build relationships with your audience right in person, and they're able to get a feel for what is the tone of this brand and the tone of the message that you're giving out to the audience. And so I always encourage my clients, whenever we have our initial story, the spotlight calls, I'm always asking them, okay, what is your mission? What is the basis of your services? And then I build out a campaign approach to align it with different observances that are taking place. So that way you're able to align your brand with societal trends. So that way, whenever they're talking about certain topics, you can refer your services or your brand into that topic. So that way, now you're trending SEO wise, you're trending with the media when you're pitching your stories to them, and you're staying relevant with the current times. And so, whenever I tell people that, hey, let's do a brand activation for you, it's not about like, oh, let's just put on an experience or just do an event. It's really about, okay, how can we tell your story creatively through an interactive experience in person and educate people through entertainment?
I love that. And that was a topic that I really wanted to cover because very often I hear from entrepreneurs that they want to trend, they want to go viral, they want to do a press release. And a lot of times their intentions in doing these things is not nearly enough high value to get the traction that they really want to have. You can't just do a press release just to say, hi, I'm fantastic. You have to think about what is the experience for the end user? What is the value in it for the end user? Hearing about just another product ain't it. I'm sorry, it just isn't. And events are such an incredible way for you to create something on behalf of your business that is incredibly engaging. I tell clients all the time, if you want your audience to be engaged, you have to be engaging. If you
Mhm.
put the minimum amount of effort into your marketing, into your videos, into your content as a whole, you're going to get the minimum results. It's really just that simple. And not only do events help you when it comes to the branding aspect of it, it also helps you guys with lead generation.
Mhm.
And when it comes to having a business, if you don't have a steady, consistent flow of leads coming in, your business will not exist in the next 5 years. It may not even exist in the next year. So let's definitely make sure that we're implementing some of these tips that we're talking about so that you can get that exposure for your business. Now, I know for you, Barry, with your business, you started off very new and really just doing the research, and I commend you on taking the initiative when it comes to that. Now, tell me, during that time, did you have any mentors that helped you in the process?
Oh yes, definitely had a few mentors who were, really good with the knowledge that they had at the time and sharing. They're like parents. Your parents only know as much as what their parents taught them. So they're only able to pass down whatever they know, but it's up to you to take that information and take it further. And so my mentors at the time, they gave me the information that they had, but unfortunately, because I was so young in entrepreneurship, I took heed to their advice. But now that I'm more mature in business, I realized that I probably needed different mentors because at the time I didn't have a business plan, I didn't have any direction. Um, I knew what I was good at, but ultimately the Beer Dynamic Agency, that was my brand, that was my identity. And because I didn't have any direction, and where my niche focused in on, it created opportunities for, with them being more seasoned, being older than me as well, with them trying to integrate themselves into my idea and essentially try to make my brand theirs. And so I struggled in the early parts on because I was getting access to all of these resources and all of this, I guess, fame at the time, but at the same time, because again, like I didn't have any direction, I solely depending on what they were telling me to do, what they felt was the best direction, what they felt was the best approach to handling these different situations. And while I do appreciate the information that was given, now that I'm more mature, here we are, gone on 9 years later, as an established business, I'm realizing I should have had mentors who were in the position that I aspired to be in, who had structure, who had systems, who had a team in place. A lot of my mentors, they were a one-man team and they were operating and appealing to look like they had a bigger team when really it was just them and they were taking credit for other people's work to look like that was their work. Um, but now I'm in a space where I want to operate as a business who has a CEO, who has employees, who has a board. That is what true business is all about. And had I known what I know now, I would have been looking for mentors that was in that position, that already had an operations in place that was seamless to where I could have been integrated into the operations versus me swimming with the sharks.
Yes, and so much to unpack there, so much value, because it's a real experience. I think a lot of us at one point in time leaned on someone because we felt as though that their years was a direct correlation to the wisdom that we hope that they had and can instill upon us, only to be unfortunately disappointed as we grow and learn in life. And in my experience, I found that is also one of the major values in business coaching as well, because then you have a non-biased person who is just going to tell you what works best, as opposed to someone who is looking for what they can get out of the situation as well. A business coach, you've paid this person to teach you a system, to teach you a process for whatever it is that you're doing. And I think you guys will be really surprised. There are coaches out there for just about every type of business that you can think of, for just about anything that you can think of. I know someone who paid for femininity coaching, right? And I know there are a couple of ladies out here who could very much so use that. There are coaches for therapists, right, on how to build a better business. There are coaches in so many different spaces, but there are also business coaches like, even for myself, Cherish Investments, and you have Myron Golden, one of my favorites. You have Russell Brunson. You have all these different coaches who focus on just the system as a whole that can be conformed to any given industry. So anyone out there who is struggling when it comes to their systems and guidance and do not currently have a solid network of people that they can go to and ask those questions and get the sound advice that they're looking for, I encourage you guys to actually go and seek coaching. One of the big things that you mentioned was about the system. So share with the audience a little bit more about the most important systems that you have found that a business owner needs to have through your years of experience.
Oh my goodness. There's so many. I mean, definitely because I am in PR, I purchase a lot of different softwares that help me with media relations and media management as well. And so those softwares allow me to, of course, with my press release distributions and then also being able to target specific niches. So some journalists only focus in sports, some journalists only focus in tech, some are only in crime. So being able to target those specific journalists and editors and producers that are in the particular niche of which the client that I'm working with. It also helped me to like stay organized, to know who did I reach out to, who I need to follow up with as well. And then once, placements were established and I was able to track automatically where those placements hit. So I got to receive alerts of, hey, your press release has hit 100 different blogs or has hit 3 different news stations. And so that allowed me to really generate analysis for my clients to really just show them, hey, here are the results of that distribution, as well as here are the impressions that that distribution received once we put it out there to the public. So definitely purchasing the softwares for that. CRMs, different task management apps. I really love Asana. That's a really good one. Monday is a really good one. Yeah, email marketing softwares. There's so there's so much money that pours into like the operations that, keeping those subscriptions up annually or monthly is very, very important to, be able to streamline your services and automate your services to people. But a new one that I'm actually looking into and I recently just learned about is called everflow.io, which I'm loving this AI space that we're in because AI is allowing you, if you do it right and you don't use it as a crutch, you could just be more successful faster. It doesn't take as long and as much lead work and red tape in order to get these different things accomplished. So Everflow.ai.io is a new software that I'm actually looking into that allows you to like streamline your lead generations, allows you to have partners and affiliates. A lot of businesses, they're not successful because they don't have a sales team or they're not generating consistent leads because they don't have a sales team. But if you're able to find a different way to build out affiliate marketing with these different people that are looking to basically act as salespeople on your behalf, but also being able to create a system of where they're able to see, hey, this is how you're going to get paid. This is how much money you're going to make off of this deal versus, oh, if you refer a client to me, I'll give you 10% of however much I made, which they're not going to know how much you made because, you can customize or charge however. So it's like, it just creates a sense of trust. It's just a sense of trust for people to want to come and work with you if they know that, hey, this is how much they're going to get paid off of this deal and they can actually see the deals and transactions. So that's a new software that I'm looking into to help streamline my services, to just create a better customer relation and just experience for the customer. So that way it's not just, oh, here are my emails. These are the results that I sent. They actually have a client portal and they're able to see this is the task, this is the hours that was spent, this is what was completed, here's what's left, so on and so forth.
I love that you are 100% right. Those are the systems that I would even recommend, and I do recommend to my students as well as my clients as well, especially that CRM. And it can get overwhelming because there are so many things that you need in order to be successful with your business. But the goal should be to look for programs, even though they sometimes can be a little bit higher of investment, that can do as much of the process as possible because the more integrated your system is, the more likely you are to use it and the less areas or gaps you're going to have in your processes. So I love that. I hadn't heard of that one, but it sounds very similar to another one that I love, Go High Level. Have you heard of that one?
I have heard, and I've actually been hearing a lot of people talk about it. So I'm actually going to do some research and like compare the two to see like the cost effectiveness and just really compare the difference between the services. But I have heard really great reviews about Go High Level as well.
Go High Level, same. I have been hearing a lot of it, but recently I just had a user walk through their agency account. So they have 2 different levels. So when you look that up, look up the agency account, because when you're talking about kind of best bang for your buck, the agency account is definitely that, because it allows you to expand your services and add on a SaaS platform for the services that you offer to your audience in a specialized way, with
Mhm,
everything working together, because it also has the addition of the landing pages. You can do pretty much unlimited websites on there, I think, workflows, and they have this new thing, agents, which I just discovered ChatGPT agents. Have you seen this? Have you used this?
mhm.
Oh my gosh. AI is definitely putting some people out of business. That's for sure. I thought of an assistant or two that, like, you don't do what I asked right anyway. Maybe we can just, but it's never going to get rid of the human touch. You're always going to need that human touch to just make sure it all makes sense. And a lot of times to properly interpret that data, but you gotta have the system. You
Mhm.
absolutely gotta have the system. Now, I know that you are in the growth phase for your business. So let's talk a little bit more about that, and what kind of let that you were in the season in life where you were ready for overflow and you were ready to kind of take your business to the next level.
Um, Honestly, when I've had clients that I've been working with for 4 and 5 years, and some of those long-standing clients that I've been working with them when I was a little bit less advanced in the knowledge that I have, and so now that I am advanced in some of the things that I've learned over time, and again, I've built out systems and structures and all these different things to just really streamline my services and create more organization for my company, so that way whenever I'm bringing on somebody to come and work with me, they're able to hop on and understand what's going on immediately versus me having to take time away to train them on how to do the things that I have in place. So once I was able to establish the organization and the structure and the systems, and some of those older clients that I've had when I didn't have those systems in place weren't respecting the new structure. And because again, I've started entrepreneurship. I mean, I've been a hustler all my life thanks to my parents. From making calls for Mary Kay to making baskets to doing all these different things as kids. So I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit in me. But officially becoming an entrepreneur and a business owner in 2016 is completely different from who I am now in 2025. And some of those early on clients, they're still operating with no structure, no systems, no organization. And because they're not organized with systems and structure, it causes me to not be organized with my systems and structure because they're not respecting the softwares and the different elements that I put in place to help make both of our lives easier. And
Right.
so because they're stuck in that old way or old frame of mind of how they do business, it kind of it started to limit me or handicap me a bit because now I find myself spending much more time with this one client, which if I
Yeah.
would have had them go through my systems and my processes, I would have been able to do what I could do for them and help 5 other clients at the same time versus spending majority of my day with that one client. So like for example, I have a client who they want me to do social media for them and all these different things. And I have my softwares where I'm able to streamline the social media, schedule the posts and let them approve it, let me know what they want or the edits and all these different things, create their own profiles. But because they don't want to go through that system, they want me to do the video, text it to them, reply back, and then they have all these different edits. Now I gotta sit on the phone for an hour going back and forth, and then they don't know what song they want. They don't know the tone of their brand. So now I'm going back and forth, and before I know it, I just spent 6 hours doing one video. Not to mention when it's time to post the video, They don't want me to sync in all their stuff into my software so I can automate everything. I have to wait to log in. I got to get their permission for them to approve me, and I got to help them with the caption and all these different things. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And by the time I have finished working on that one subject, on that one task, I'm so mentally drained because I've invested so much time in doing this one tedious thing versus I could have, had all of the stuff that I needed. Go ahead and make all the content, put it in my software. Hey, send you over a link. Go check that link. You go read and watch and look at the captions, and you can accept or deny which of the posts, and I can go through scheduling, and bam, I done moved on to something else. So once I realized that some of my clients weren't just growing and evolving in the direction that I was, that's where I realized, okay, it's time for me to have different clients who also have this same standard of what I am seeking to set, because the Bear Dynamic brand is not just a name, like it's a standard. It means to be the force stimulating change. And when to be dynamic, that means you are very impactful. And Barry is partial as a play on my last name. So it's really who I am. I am setting the standard of being impactful, of being organized, of being just the force in any and everything that I do. When I started having same client, when it comes to events, we talk about brand activations, whereas having these systems in place, if you're having an event and then that needs logistics, you need to have those different logistics in place. You need to have your Excel sheets. You need to have your seating charts. You need to have your different forms for people to fill out so you're able to get bios and photos and social medias. All these different logistics need to be put in place. But when I have a client that doesn't want to follow through that system, and they want to text me this or text me this menu or this and that. And now things are getting lost in the framework, and not only getting lost between whoever's sending her the information that she's sending it to me, but now you're forgetting to get information from that person and this person. And now here we go. We show up to an event and certain people names aren't on the list. People don't have seats. There's not enough food that's been ordered. So certain little things like that shouldn't be happening when you have set a standard for your brand, and when you have set an expectation of the experience that you want to give your audience. It's not about just showing up looking pretty on photos and videos, but it's actually about the reviews that people are going to give you when they say, hey, this is how I felt when I showed up. It was a smooth process, a smooth check-in process. We started on time, all these different things. So I've realized that I have got to a place where every client isn't my ideal client. And I can't help everyone, especially when they're not willing to adapt to the systems, the structure, and organization that you have put in place. I have put in place for my business. So that's when I knew that it was time to grow, because it was time to change the type of clients that I have been attracting.
It's like life. It's like when we think of our friends, sometimes your absolute best friend in middle school or high school isn't necessarily going to be the person that you're closest to once you're married and you have kids. We all go through different seasons. And sometimes when you are in that season of growth, if you are still holding on to clients that don't align, processes that don't align with where you're at right now, you are going to be the cause of your bottleneck, and you're going to be the cause of your inability to grow. And I absolutely love that you shared that, because it is so incredibly important. A lot of times we desire to achieve a certain income, we desire to have a certain success in our business, but our actions don't necessarily match up with that. We have to enforce. We absolutely have to enforce the rules and the standards that we set, and that we set for our businesses and ourselves. And I love that you are doing that with your business. That is definitely the way to grow and scale to the next level, because a lot of times people will decide that it's time to grow just because I want more money. Decide that it's time to grow just because I desire to reach this certain income level, but they wonder why they're not receiving that, because they've got that old baggage that just keeps bringing them back down, right? realistically, it's just a math thing, right? If you're having to spend 10 hours on one client, when with that proper system, you could have worked with 10 different clients, which one are you making more money with, right? 10 aligned clients that are a part of the system, or that one client that is eating up all of your time and probably also ask for a discount if we're just being honest.
Come on now. Yes, they did. Oh man, it's always the ones that don't want to pay what you're worth that requires the most, and that's why I make people pay even more. Cause I'm like, no, it's not just my talents; it's my mental health. I gotta use this to
It's
get some therapy when I'm done with you.
It very much so is when you are dealing in a people's business. I used to work for a real estate investment company, and one of the best quotes that the founder ever came up with is that real estate is easy, people are hard.
Hmm.
Because yes and yes. And when you're in a 100% people business like yourself, the absolute weight of dealing with the person as an individual, right? Dealing with them as a business owner, because those are two different people and they got
Yes.
two different opinions. And sometimes they conflict with each other while you're on the phone, and trying to make sense of all of that, dealing with their audience and their clientele, because those are also two different people, as well as the people who are buying their product. Like, there are so many moving pieces to business. The weight of all of that can be very heavy. So, tell us a little bit more about how you handle that weight, and how where your faith plays a role in all of that.
Well, my faith is the anchor of my lifestyle. So there'll be many of conversations where I don't even know if my client believes in God or not, but I'm gonna drop the G word real quick on them. And you gonna hear you got just because I wouldn't be who I am if I did not have God in my life. And to be honest with you, entrepreneurship is a full on faith walk. I got closer to God when I became an entrepreneur because that's where I realized I had to really lean on God to be the source of my income, to truly be my provider, to truly open up the doors for me to walk into. And so, oftentimes, and most times, I mean, I'm always going to bring up not more so my faith, but more so just really use God and reference God as a coaching mechanism to where, hey, we're not just doing this event, so we're not just putting the service out. We need to figure out, how is your work glorifying God? How is this aligning with your purpose in life? And so I had one particular client that focused on, it had a huge mental health advocacy aspect to it, which also tied into like burnout prevention. But as we're talking, of course you get close to your clients, they start sharing, personal information, or not even sharing personal information. I pick up on when something's not right with my client, or if they're not having a good day, or hey, we have an interview and you're in the middle of the interview and you're just like, hey, I don't want to do this. And then you shut the interview off. And then I have to call you and be like, hey, what's going on? Why are you, that was a live show that you were on, So really digging deep to find out what's going on with them. And before I know it, hey, they're talking about they're going through some things at home with their significant other. And so now I'm saying, well, hey, how's y'all relationship with Christ? Do y'all go to church? Do you pray together? All those different things start coming up in the conversation because I realized that I can't have you to excel in this campaign if you're not grounded in your personal life. And to be grounded in your personal life, it all has to come back to your relationship with God. Is God the center of the message of your business? And when I'm also choosing my clients, that also plays a role in the clients that I work with. Hey, are you about just influencing people to do something, or is your brand truly about an impact in the community and changing people's lives? And so that's how I'm able to align with my clients, and of course, leverage my relationship with God to align with the right people. So that way, whenever I'm working with them, they're also stimulating a message that God wants me to also propel. So sometimes whenever I get stuck, I'm like, okay, God, what am I supposed to be doing right now? What's going on? I might get a client that calls me and say, hey, I'm a survivor of domestic violence and this and that, and I have this idea. And so now it puts me in a framework of, okay, we need to put a campaign together where we're talking about, identifying the triggers and self-love and healing your inner childhood and the trauma that's coming along with attracting these type of people, and also referring that back to your faith. So I'm always just finding ways to integrate God into the midst of what's taking place. My last example, one of my clients, she is real big in the event planning, event decorating space, but her and her husband were having issues with conceiving. And so now we did some research, started talking about fibrosis and all these other different things. And when Mother's Day came around, it was a touchy subject, because hey, everybody's celebrating mothers, but what about the women with the unseen children? And so creating a Mother's Day experience where we were able to highlight women in business that had suffered from child loss, infertility, and miscarriages, and just being able to just really highlight the business aspect of what's taking place, because you still have to keep moving forward in
Right.
business. You don't have time to really grieve, but then also really highlight, like, hey, this is a real issue that's taking place in the community. Let's inform the community of what's going on, and then bring in the experts to talk about how can you reverse that issue, or how can you, enhance your chances of being able to conceive. But then again, it all came back to God, glorifying God, and, trusting God's process, and what his timing as well. And so that created a campaign that I created from scratch, but was able to just really bring people closer together and bring people closer to God. And it was just he was just in the atmosphere. And so that's where I just really realized, like, okay, nothing I do will prosper if I don't keep God at the forefront. And when I get these clients that are in the entertainment space or reality TV space, or, just the more rawer industries, those industries don't ever, really bring me fulfillment, because they're not moving with God at the forefront of their brand's mission. So, yeah, hopefully that answers
I
your question.
love it. My least favorite overly used saying, especially in the Black community, is do what I say, not what I do. I hate
Mhm,
that. I absolutely hate that. And I love that you have turned that on its head, and you are not only talking and believe about God, but it is a part of your daily journey and the way you show up in business. What I find a lot of times with entrepreneurs, and I say that because I found it first in myself, is that we believe that we have to show up like the entrepreneur. And then in other times, we have to show up as the child of God. And we fail to realize that they are the same. You should be
mhm,
that same child of God in every aspect of your life, and your business is a part of that. And
mm,
especially for us high driven, they've been throwing around that term high value, high value men and women. But as driven people who tend to go towards perfectionism, people who tend to be high achieving, those individuals, especially business and whatever career path that you're in, whether it's entrepreneurship or working, is a big part of your identity.
mhm,
And your faith needs to be a part of that as well. You do not have to show up in two different areas. And if you are in an environment that would force you to do so, you probably need to ask some deeper questions of if that is the environment for you. Right. And what does that actually look like? It doesn't have to look like you being dime store preacher. Right. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about when God leads your heart to share a word about something that can help someone, do it. Be obedient to that. When you have an opportunity to show love, to show grace, do that. Do that if you can. And that doesn't mean that you have to be a weak business person or let people walk all over you. Because I find that that's what people think of, right? They think that if you show up in business as a child of God, well, people are just going to walk all over you and that's just going to be that. No, no one said, I mean, if there's a scripture that shows when the Lord walked into the church and saw that they had turned it into business central when it was supposed to be work, it was supposed to be prayer and worship time. He was flipping tables, right? Like there's nothing that says that you can't stand up for what's right. Meaning, if somebody owes you money, stand on business if they owe you
God
money.
says to
And
be bold. Be
look,
bold.
be
There's
bold, be
nothing
bold about
about
that.
God that screams weak, that screams, lazy. There's none of those
None of
negative
that. The
vibrations.
Bible tells us the opposite. The Bible tells us that laziness is a thing that he absolutely hates. The Bible tells you that meekness is not something that he wants us to see when it comes to his word. Those are the times when we are supposed to be bold and supposed to stand up for what is right. So I just hope that encourages you guys if you are in that place in life where you realize that in life you've been going through it as two different people. And a lot of times it's not even two different people. And I don't mean that in a split personality way. I mean, we all wear masks, right? The way that you talk to your grandmother is very different than you talk to your girlfriend, or at very least it should. Now, this new generation, that's a different conversation. And them not really having the code switching ability. But for the most part, we all know what it means to show up according to the environment that you are in. But just know that in all environments, you are always a child of God. And just remember that and lead boldly and fully into that. And I know you have had that experience with your business, with the more that you leaned into your faith, your clientele started changing. So tell
Mhm.
the audience a little bit more about that.
Just more so, again, when I was young, a young entrepreneur, didn't have any guidance, didn't have a business plan, didn't have any, end goal or just any representations of individuals in the industry that I admire to be like. Of course, I'll always say my inspiration did come from Olivia Pope and Scandal. That's when I
Mhm.
first really just started learning about PR and crisis communications and crisis management and everything. But as it relates to people that I could touch and feel and see in real life, I didn't have access or I hadn't did the proper research to find those individuals. And so as it relates to growing in my faith, again, entrepreneurship is a faith walk because you don't know where your income is going to come from. Basically,
Right.
entrepreneurship is about you eat what you kill. And so it's kind of the same aspect when it comes to your faith. The food's not going to appear unless you believe that you're going to keep walking and the food plates going to start coming to you and people gonna start putting stuff on your plate, that you don't even realize. And so essentially, yeah, my faith got stronger in God as I have grown over the years into entrepreneurship. Of course, I was raised in the church. My family, my stepfather at the time, he was a pastor, so we had our own church. I was the usher, the drill team, the praise dancer, the greeter. I was everything, the choir. I was everything. So, definitely growing up in the church and having that instilled into me at a young age, it was more so a routine relationship. But as I went off to college and started to find my own way and then get into entrepreneurship, that's when I trickled back to my faith. I explored all these other avenues and then it all brought me back to. And so now it even plays a role in the type of people that, the clients that I attract as well, because, you know, there's a saying that, you should never do business with someone that would cheat on their significant other. And so, because if they'll cheat on the person that they lay in the bed with, then they'll, do bad business with you as well. And so I just realized that that's all having that faith structure, that family structure in place and God being first. I'm realizing like, okay, those are the type of people that I want to also attract because I aspire to be a wife. I aspire to be a mother. I aspire to have, the ability to pass down generational wealth. And the only way that that can be done is one, by keeping God first, but then also being honest, being loyal, being, genuine in the type of work that you do and the type of people that you do business with. And so when we talk about equally yoked, it's not about just in a romantic standpoint, it's in all aspects of life. You know, light doesn't dwell with darkness and so on and so forth. And so I'm just realizing that as I'm getting closer to God and in my faith, I'm shunning away from things that can tempt me off of my course. And that includes the message that I put out there with the campaigns that I work. There was at one point I was working at a club and a lounge, and I was it was an intricate part of my life because I was money hungry. Like I was in survival mode. You know, I needed to keep money in my, so I was willing to just work with any and everybody just to keep the income coming in. And at one point I found myself working with a club and working with a church at the same time. And I thought that that was God really putting the devil and the angel on my shoulder and really making me choose, like, okay, well, you say you walk with me, you operate in survival mode. Where is your faith? You with light and you with darkness. Like, which one is it gonna be? And I found myself very conflicted in that point because at one moment I'm writing a story about the nativity and Christmas and the reason for Jesus and creating these different structures and inviting people to come out to church for Christmas and New Year's and all these different things. On the other hand, I'm creating campaigns to push drink specials and happy hours and Halloween costumes and come out for New Year's, come turn up and come do the New Year's ball drop, you know, all these different things. And so it was like on one side, I'm pushing people away from sobriety. I'm pushing people to live in drunkenness, to operate in a sense of greed so that we can get their money, promoting provocative looking women, pushing vanity and sexuality to get me people to come into the atmosphere. And then because I'm around that situation, you know, I was at a point where I wasn't smoking, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing all these different things, but because I was around it so much, now I find myself having to drink here, drink there, or you know, now I'm out till 2, 3 in the morning or whatever the case. No good. Well, I gotta go to church. I gotta be on the phone with this church organization the next day, you know. So it was like my spirit was battling each other because it was like, okay, you asked me, this is what God is saying, you asked me to bless you with abundance and give you access and, you know, provide and this is this. But then you have a church on this end, which I did a really good job for them, but it toiled with my spirit having both. And eventually I ended up just letting both of the businesses go because I felt like I need to center myself. I need to ground myself because I can't be the light to this light because I got this darkness that's trying to reel me into this lifestyle. But then I also can't, I'm trying to be the light to this darkness. But no matter how many ways I spin it, that atmosphere is gonna stay dark because that's what they're promoting. And so once I closed out, you know, my campaigns with the church and that, you know, was a successful turnout. They had more attendees that attended, you know, that year versus the previous year. So, you know, I did it really good with the lead generations and the promo and just, you know, giving them the feedback that they needed to be successful. And once I wrapped up my campaign with the club and you know we did the New Year's and I brought in different events and brand partnerships and everything, I was able to close that out successfully. Then I was just like, okay, God, no more, no more survival mode, no more. I'm putting my trust fully into you. And you know it took some time to recalibrate my brand and my business, and the type of business that I was wanting to attract because I had to really go to the center of me and figure out, okay, who are you? What do you want to represent? Because when you get on social media, you look like you all over the place. One minute you promoting this, and next you promoting that, and it's like you have to pick your niche and stay within the niche. You know, figure out what you're going to manage your attention on, figure out your target market, your targeted message, and then I have to be consistent and repetitious in that information that I consistently put out. So if I'm going to be focused on empowerment and inspiration and impactfulness, then that's the lane that I need to stay in. But if I'm going to focus on influence and entertainment and lust and greed, then I had to stay in that place. And so ultimately that's when I just had to make a decision, like, I choose the right way. And from then on out, of course, I just naturally started to attract more of those type of clients. And not to say that they, had the best relationship with God. Sometimes it was just me being put in their life to be able to enhance and expand and solidify their need for God even more. So it allowed me to, now that I'm on this walk, it allowed me to sharpen iron with other sharp individuals, but then also sharpen iron with people that were getting a little dull and a little weary in their walk as well.
And it's so true. It's so incredibly true. We do have to come to the place where we make a decision, where we make a choice. God, it is a falsity to think that God wants us to be in survival mode, in stressed out mode, but yet that has become commonplace. When we look at the world, the majority of people are operating from this place of survival, of life is life, and I'm just trying to make it. But that is not where God wants us to be. He wants us to be at peace. That's why he gave us grace. That's why he gave us his son to give us an opportunity to experience that. And it's not to say that the life of someone who believes in God has no problems. No, it's just you choose to have faith and you choose to live in peace through anything that life throws at you. But when you lean into that obedience, you will be absolutely amazed at how God blesses you with more aligned client, with more fulfilling work, with a life that truly meets what you've always desired, because his plans are always bigger and better than anything than we can ever come up with. God is always moving around us. It's just a matter of, are we working with him or against him? And when we're constantly living in that place of depletion, of lack, of just stress in general, that's usually a sign that we're not working or walking in step with him. And I love to see the full circle journey. Having known you since our college days at UT, I love to see you full journey into this place where you are walking in step with him. I think it is just so incredibly beautiful and inspirational, and it was definitely one of the things I was most excited about with having you on this show, because you have always been a beautiful spirited person. You've always had this incredible heart, and to see you now in a place where you're able to share that with others and to help them to be seen in the way that they need to be seen, to help them to tell their stories and to use your work as a form of missionary work, because a lot of times people think that missionary work means go over to Africa and build a church or something like that, and that's another falsity, right? That's not what that is. We have an opportunity every single day that we wake up to do God's work and share hope and share love and share faith. So thank you so much for being exactly who you are. Thank
Mhm.
you for being here with us today. You guys, thank you. You had many options on the great wide web of things that you could have done with your past hour, and you chose to be here, and that matters. Again, I am Lachey. I am so happy that you guys have decided to bring me on your entrepreneurial journey. And until the next time and the next episode, bye, my cherished loves.